All right, welcome to Riverside Voices, where we amplify stories from the heart of Riverside County with engaging conversations with guests that have unique experiences. Today, for our first episode, I have none other than Pep Fernandez. Welcome to the show, Pep.
Hey, Josh, how are you doing?
Good, good. And I know people know Pep Fernandez from the board brief and also as the Department Public Information Officer for RCIT, but what you might not know about Pep is he actually has his own sporting business where he interviews local high school athletes. So Pep, tell me a little bit about your sport business. What does it entail?
So Josh, basically what we do is we do a weekly show and we highlight local sports here in Riverside County and the entire Inland Empire. So we're talking about a lot of high school, some college as well, and we do interviews. We'll go out and shoot highlights of local games, and we produce a 1 hour show every single week.
Nice. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey, about how you started your business?
You know, it's kind of funny because I think we all have like different journeys to get to this spot. Mine's kind of nomadic. You know, I was a lot of different places and bounced around, and I'll try to make this a short, Twitter 140 character version of my life story in terms of at least my career. So coming out of high school, I actually wanted to major in archaeology. I thought like being Indiana Jones would be like the coolest thing ever.
Every kid from the 90s, right?
Right. It was like the best thing. And but the summer before I went into college, I got a summer job. My parents got me this summer job, and I was milking cows on a dairy at 3 a.m. And this dairy farm was like 45 minutes away from my house. Like my summer was just blowing up. It was terrible. I hated it at the time. But at 3 a.m. milking cows all alone by myself, I had a lot of time to think. And I'm like, well, am I really going to be Indiana Jones? Am I really going to major in archaeology? What am I going to do? And I started coming around to the idea of like, well, I love sports. Didn't necessarily want to be a coach, but I love sports. What could I do? So I got to about my sophomore year in college, and I decided to major in journalism with an emphasis in broadcasting. Took some broadcasting classes in television and radio, got a couple internships, and the rest is history. I was in local TV news. I've been in TV since 2000, so that's kind of how I got to this point, at least.
And is it true? I swear, I used to hear your voice on ESPN radio when you were, or ESPN, I think, Plus at the CBU basketball games. Was that you or no?
Trey Armstrong up ahead to Taryn, lobs it to Dan Hawkins. What a way to finish out homecoming.
Yeah. So for 4 seasons, I did men's and women's basketball games for CBU. So just the home games. So it was a lot of fun to do those games on ESPN Plus. And before that, I did UC Riverside for 4 seasons, and that was all the games, home and away. So if they were going to Hawaii or Montana or Michigan, I got to go with them too. So yeah, like the play-by-play stuff, I enjoyed. It's not really, I would say, like my strongest area, but yeah, I did it for CBU and UCR and loved it.
So for your business, take us through a typical day of like how does it work? Because Riverside County is so big and has so many different high schools and athletes. How do you choose like which ones to go and interview?
I'll choose. I'll use a typical day during football season because it's I would say the most complicated, time-consuming, and the most difficult. So at least here in Riverside County, we have high school football on Thursday, Friday, and sometimes Saturdays. So Thursday night, I'll leave here from RivCoTV and I'll go to a game or two. And then on Friday, I'll do the same thing. And then we do a high school football show on Friday nights. And then on Saturday, I'm either at RCC or San Bernardino Valley College doing football there. We live stream their games as well. Nice. So it's like from Thursday to Saturday night is kind of like a blur.
Okay.
So it's, we go to a lot of games, like I said, and shoot video and get interviews. And that's just one aspect. Then I got to go home and stay up till the wee hours of the morning editing this video. And producing that content.
Do you have a favorite sport you cover? Or do you
probably football, but it's definitely a love-hate relationship. Okay. Because I do love it, but the hours are insane. So like Thursday nights, I'm probably up till 1 or 2 in the morning. Friday nights, no joke, probably at least 3 a.m.
Okay. Now, do you have a particular, can you share a particular memory or a game or an athlete that you've either interviewed or covered that just is memorable, like your favorite moment in your career so far?
That is really hard, but the one I always like to fall back on just because it's so obscure and random. Because when you think of sports, like I said, we do a lot of high school, a lot of college. But my background is local television news, and one of my TV jobs as a sports anchor was to interview Kobayashi. Do you remember the guy who won all those hot dog eating championships
Oh my gosh, yes.
at the Nathan's hot dog eating
funny.
contest?
You interviewed him.
So through a Japanese interpreter, I interviewed Kobayashi on the news.
Nice.
And I look back, I'm like, that's something that is just so random. Like I would have never thought in a million years I would be interviewing, world champion eater Kobayashi. So
Where did you meet? Where did you meet that?
oh gosh, he was coming through town. He was doing some like world tour, like trying to eat more than everybody else, because that's what he does, right? Yeah. And he was just passing through, and they were like, do you want to interview him? I'm like, well, yeah, of course. And he travels with an interpreter, so it made it easy. And yeah, so I mean, I've interviewed like, professional athletes and football players and whatnot, but the Kobayashi interview just kind of still strikes me because it was just so random. I would have never guessed something like that was possible.
Now, sometimes when you're interviewing these high school kids, and they eventually do make it to the pros, do you ever get a chance to interview them if they come back home?
Yeah, like quite a bit, and that's the cool thing too, especially here in Riverside County. We've got some great professional athletes that have come from the high schools and the colleges here, and most of them, for the most part, they not only come back home, but they give back to the local community.
Nice.
And that's really the cool story there.
Gosh. Yeah, that is amazing. I know that's got to be nice to hear. That's nice to hear, because I know sometimes athletes, when they do leave, they just don't.
And some of them do, and that's their prerogative, and that's cool. But a lot of them come back. In fact, a quick plug, I think not this weekend, but next weekend, the starting running back for the Las Vegas Raiders, the weekend of June 29th, Alexander Madison, he's hosting a free youth football camp at UC Riverside. So at UCR,
Nice.
if you're a youth football kid, and it's like 3 days, so you like stay the night in the dorms for a couple nights. So it's like those stories of like local guys from this area who've come back, and even though they've got all this fame and money and life is great, they still come back and they give back, and I think that's the most important part.
Oh yeah. Now, how do you feel like high school sports impacts the local community?
I think it trains young adults to be adults. I mean, sports mimics real life.
Yeah.
Teamwork, perseverance. When things are not going well, how do you respond? Authority, right? You have coaches that are telling you what to do, like respect for authority. All those sorts of things. You can learn in high school sports. So I hear it so many times of, high school athletes graduating, moving on, and then circling back years later to tell their high school coach, like, oh my gosh, you have no idea the impact you had on my life.
Yeah.
And I think that's what resonates with me, at least, covering high school sports and being able to share, these stories of these high school athletes, is how impactful high school sports really is. Besides being fun, like it really does kind of set you up for the rest of your life.
Now, how has it changed since you first started to now in regards to covering high school sports? I feel like high school sports now has gotten to be a bigger thing, at least in my opinion, than it was when I was in high school.
Yeah, it's almost like a business, right? Like you got to perform well. If you're a coach, your team has to do well. It has to perform well, or they'll fire you and they'll find the next guy to come in line. I think it's so much of a school's identity is tied to their athletics and their sports teams that you have to win, and the team has to do well, and you have to bring in fans. It's so in some respect it's kind of like a business. And I know a lot of these coaches are teachers as well, and so they're on campus and they're making a difference there in the classroom as well. But I think for a lot of these coaches, it's like you gotta win or you're not going to be able to keep that position.
Now, I know you probably have your favorite teams because you. Being from here for a while, is it hard to stay objective? Is it, especially if you're covering like your favorite high school team or a player you like, and you're like, oh, I hope they win, but you're there obviously just to cover the game. Is that tough, or is that just reporting life? You just take that out?
Well, I've been accused of playing favorites, and I guess Josh, you're a father. I'm a father as well. You know, when people say, "Oh, which one's your favorite kid?" Well, the diplomatic answer is, "I love them all the same," right?
Yeah.
So when people say, "Oh, do you have a favorite school?" Of course I say, "No, I love them all the same." But really, it's just, if you're in first place, if you're winning championships, you're going to get more coverage than the team who, did not win a game this season. It's just kind of the nature of the beast for sports. So, if it looks like I'm gravitating towards, certain teams at certain times, it's because they're winning or they have a great story to share. But yeah, so I don't necessarily play favorites, but if you win a lot, if you have a lot of league titles and CIF championship runs and whatnot, of course you're going to get coverage.
Where do you see it going in the future? Do you think it's just going to keep on growing with the amount of coverage that it takes? Like, I feel like now I see like kids committing to schools. They have like a whole group around them and actually have like cameras and things like that. I think it's just going to get bigger.
I think it is. I think it's only going to continue to grow, and we've seen the popularity of like these, high school sports, websites that cover recruiting and who's signing with who, and that's kind of a big business in itself. So I think, high school sports, especially here in Riverside County, because we got really good high school sports and some really good programs. I mean, the exposure is awesome, and I think more exposure is coming. It's just hard because we're not in a media market per se. Like, I've been other places where high school sports it's a huge deal, but it gets a lot of coverage because they have their own market. Like, I worked in, like Reading and Chico and Eureka and Bakersfield, and like high school sports, college sports are like the biggest thing going. So they're always on, the TV news that night. So in those certain areas, they're kind of spoiled because they have their own market. But out here, we get swallowed up by the Los Angeles market, so it doesn't necessarily have the same degree of coverage, but I think it deserves it, and I think because of websites and whatnot, it's getting more. It's getting better.
So what advice, say there's a young kid who's growing up and wants to be a sport reporter, what would be advice you would give that kid about wanting to become a sports reporter?
I would say probably don't say no, try everything. So when I first started, not to go down my list of like random jobs, but I interned at a country music station. I was doing PA announcing for women's basketball. I did a little bit of everything because I wanted to find out exactly, what was I going to like the best? What was my wheelhouse? And, when I got into my broadcasting career, at least professionally, I decided, to be the local TV news sports anchor. And I loved it. It was great. But a little bit later on in life, I started doing hosting and emceeing and doing play-by-play, as we mentioned, like for CBU and UCR. So a lot of those things, I just didn't say no. I have a hard time saying no to anybody, so I just usually say yes, and that at least those experiences and those open door opportunities at least allowed me to find out what I liked and kind of what I didn't like as well.
So kind of the last question I have for you, Pep, is it feels like community is super important for local sports, especially high school sports. How do you feel like community can help basically improve high school sports?
Josh, that's a great question because, to support a high school program, it's just kind of generic. Like, what exactly does that mean? And at least for me, like, I've worked in some areas where it's, the population, there's just not a lot of people, right? So on a Friday night, specifically for high school football, the whole town shuts down, right? The whole town shuts down and everybody goes to the high school football game and everyone loves, the Friday night lights. And here at Riverside County, at least, we have that to some degree. Like, we still kind of have that small town feel in some places. Mm-hmm. So in terms of just supporting high school athletics, I think one is go out and support your team, go out and watch the games, right? There's some schools here in Riverside County have huge crowds, and that's great. Some don't. And, I think it's great for parents and friends and family members to go out and go to these games and give the athletes, a big crowd to play in front of. Yeah. And the other big thing, too, is, and this might be touching a touchy issue, and I'll make this quick, is just supporting not only the coaches, but also the officials, the referees. Okay. Because it's only getting tougher to be a coach and or a referee at this point because they're criticized you're always making the wrong call. You're not playing the kid enough. They need more playing time.
Yeah.
So if you want to be able to support high school sports in the community, the best thing you could do is be supportive, but with a positive attitude, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to be critical of everything.
I have a hard time, and my kids just started playing organized sports in just a nice, friendly basketball league, and even I have to bite my tongue and I know the refs already. I think they're just volunteering
They're
their time.
volunteers. They don't want to hear
Yeah,
from you.
No, they don't. They don't. But I totally understand that. So before we go, Pep, I wanted to bring up one last thing. I heard recently you were actually nominated for the Riverside Sport Hall of Fame, where you actually have now your name on a wall in the city of Riverside. Is that true?
It is true. And in fact, I haven't seen my name on the wall yet. There was a ceremony for the Wall of Fame, and it's the Wall of Distinction, they call it. It's actually not too far from our RivCoTV studios, just down the road. But yeah, it was awesome. So the Riverside Sport Hall of Fame acknowledges people in the community that they put on the wall, and this is for the city of Riverside specifically. In this case, so it was awesome to be able to share that with my family and be recognized for something I enjoy doing, and like I mentioned, a lot of my at least sports career was pretty nomadic, moving from TV station to TV station and city to city. So when I finally got down here to Riverside, I feel like they really adopted me. Like, they didn't know who I was, they didn't know where I came from or what I was all about, and yet they welcomed me in, and to be part of this Riverside sports community, it means a lot to me. It means the world.
Were you completely caught off guard by it, or did you kind of hear it was coming along? Like, how they do? They call you?
They sent me a letter. I got a letter in the mail, but I will not name names. I will go to the grave with it. But I was tipped off that it may be coming. So,
Nice. Oh, okay.
So I knew in the back of my mind, but I didn't know if it was going to be an email, a phone call, or whatever. I just remember checking the mail one day, and I was like, "Oh, what's this?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it finally happened." So.
That's awesome. What an honor! Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is really cool. I'll have to go. Maybe I can go get a picture of that.
Me too. I want to go down there too. I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it yet. Well, that's going to do it. If you want to follow Pep Fernandez with his show, Pep, where can they follow you?
So we've got a lot of different places. You can go online, sportswithpep.com, Inland Sports on all the social media platforms. We still do Facebook a little bit, but we're big on Instagram, Inland_sports_show, and then also on Twitter at Inland_sports. So if you like local sports here, especially at the high school or college level, a lot of video, pictures, score updates, stuff like that.
Nice. Well, thank you for tuning in. And then, until next time, this is Riverside Voices signing off.